have begun over the last few decades, and its illuminating results will be reviewed in this book. In Chapter 1, we examine the concept of happiness and attempt to tease apart its various senses. Some varieties of happiness may be more measurable than others, and some, perhaps not the same ones, more worth pursuing. Chapter 2 examines the question of whether people are basically happy or basically unhappy, and why. Chapters 3 and 4 turn to the question of why some people seem to be happier than others. Are people happy because good things happen to them, or do good things happen to them because they are happy? Evidence that people's enduring levels of happiness come at least as much from themselves and the way they think as they do from the objective facts of their circumstances. Chapter 5 turns to the brain systems underlying emotions and moods. The feeling of well-being emerges from the interplay of neural circuits that are the products of millions of years of evolution. In men, as in mice, positive and negative emotions rely on separate, dedicated neural circuits, which respond to status, to threats, and to rewards in the environment. The systems controlling pleasure are not identical to those controlling desire. This is an important lesson. The psychology of aspiration is not that of satisfaction. We do not always want what we like, or like what we want. Chapter 6 considers the problem of how to be happier from the kinds of remedies on offer to the ways in which they can work. Finally, Chapter 7 attempts to synthesize briefly what we know about the often paradoxical psychology of happiness, and consider why we might be set up the way that we are. We are designed, not for happiness or unhappiness, but to strive for the goals that evolution has built into us. Happiness is a handmaiden to evolution's purposes here, functioning not so much as an actual reward, but as an imaginary goal that gives us direction and purpose. That goal may never get any nearer, but it may not need to. Jefferson's fundamental right, after all, was not happiness itself, but the pursuit of happiness. Nothing, not even a utopia, can necessarily make the pursuit of happiness a successful one that ends in capture. The best society can merely allow every individual to flourish in the pursuit. And, looked at in the right way, this may be enough. The book concludes with a discussion of the prospects for future happiness. We, in the developed world at least, are wealthier, healthier, and freer than ever before. To expect large gains in happiness to follow suit may be unrealistic, for reasons which will become clear. There is even evidence that certain types of unhappiness are on the rise, and we will consider why this may be. The problem with the concept of happiness is trying to make it do enough without making it do too much. If we define it narrowly as a certain type of feeling or physiological state, then we can, in principle, measure it objectively. But it is too trivial a thing to be the foundation of all public life and private decisions. On the other hand, if we define it broadly as something like the elements of the good life, then it is so broad as to beg the question, and certainly too broad to be measured in national statistics. Yet we intuitively feel that there is something called happiness, something unitary, but not trivial, concrete enough to strive for, yet broad enough to be worth striving for. The pursuit of this familiar, obscure, paradoxical object of desire is the theme of this book. The concept of happiness is a bit like a mirage to social scientists. It shimmers on the horizon as an appealing object of study, but often has a tendency to slip away when it is most closely approached. In this mirage-like quality, it is much like happiness itself. 1. Comfort and joy. At first glance, happiness seems a little like love. If you have to ask whether you are in it or not, you are probably not. Few of us much care to define it, but by heaven we know it when we see it. The subjective, fuzzy, vague feel of the concept meant that happiness was neglected in psychology for many decades. For example, the 1985 Penguin Dictionary of Psychology moves unfalteringly from haploid to haptic without any signs of regret. Hedonic tone gets 3 lines a few pages later. Surely psychologists must have thought happiness is a kind of homespun folk category of thing that may have a certain use in barroom gossip but has no place in scholarly research articles. Actually, I will argue quite the opposite. However hard we try to fill our scholarly discourse with more palatable-sounding alternatives, utility, hedonic tone, subjective well-being, positive emotionality, we are actually talking about some aspect